prosecution accuses the defendant of the following crimes. The League to Preserve American Democracy is bringing charges of sedition and indoctrination to the School of Critical Literacy, prohibiting literacy theorists and practitioners from including in its program of instruction any courses or classes that promote the overthrow of the United States government, promote resentment toward a race or class of people, are designed primarily for pupils of a particular ethnic group, or advocate ethnic solidarity instead of the treatment of pupils as individuals. How does the defendant plead to these crimes?
Your Honor, I plead not guilty.
You may be seated.
In these classes, they're being taught that they are oppressed. They're being taught that they're not part of this great nation. These students are at a time of their lives where they are searching for an identity. They are searching for a group to belong to, and it's the job of the public education system to foster caring relationships with these students. It is the duty of the public education system to teach students that if they apply themselves and work hard enough, that they can take part in the American dream that we all take so seriously.
The League to Preserve American Democracy belongs to a school of thought that dehumanizes students as receptacles of knowledge, thereby limiting students' potential to the confines of prescribed codes of behavior and success, largely determined by authority figures who have no connection to their culture or material conditions. The League to Preserve American Democracy would like to disguise their undemocratic, dehumanizing ideology by demonizing the opposition as seditious. As a result, they have brought several fallacious and vague indictments upon the School of Critical Literacy.
Yo, Dick, what? Come on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Horn. What would you define American democracy to be?
I would define it the same way I think that I said about with schooling, that it's a government by the people, and every person that is an American citizen is of the people, and if they work hard, they can succeed, and they will not be held back because of the race they happen to be born into, which is what these programs like to teach people, that they're oppressed because of that.
Mr. Horn, I've heard you say that we shouldn't teach students about oppression and acts of oppression because
I agree.
they're sort of a downer, is what
Yes.
you called it.
We should be teaching students positive stuff about themselves, about our government, about this country.
Okay. Now, Mr. Horn.
When they're teaching Raza students that their government is against them and hates them because they stole their land, they're talking about their lives today and that the government is currently oppressing them. They're not talking about events in the past in that way.
Success of students depends on decisions you make. So how do you see the School of Critical Literacy as promoting sedition and indoctrinating youth?
These children are young. They haven't been able to actually be able to learn some of their own critical thought. And so they might be indoctrinated to believing all that they're learning in the School of Critical Literacy and wanting to maybe drop out of college. Currently there's 7,000 students a day that drop out of college. And we're in a recession. How are we going to be able to get out of this recession with all this brain drainage from just students dropping out of college and not completing their high school, going on to college, starting their careers, and being able to help us get to the forefront of the world economy? Right now, my big issue is that I see the School of Critical Literacy not really looking at the true issues in education, but also just making them worse. The true issues are we're 21st in math and 24th in science in the world. And we're supposed to be one of the top industrial countries in the world. So how are we going to get out of this recession, out of this poverty, by just being critical of the system and not giving the depth of analysis that maybe these students need to get to college? Because if they're already being critical of it while they're in high school, they might not be given a chance. They might just become one of the 7,000 that drop out every day.
And what can be the positive impacts of critical literacy education?
Why haven't you learned anything?
Well, obviously, it's the ability to think and read and write the world as they see it, not as I see it, not as I prescribe it to them, because that does not happen in my school. What happens in my school of thought is merely a facilitation on any teacher's part in the process of collective realization and actualization upon the world with which they can act upon and Some of those acts may be seen as seditious to the government or the ruling class. I am not here to say that. I actually am not part of the ruling class, so I wouldn't know.
Explain to me, what do you mean by liberation?
Well, liberation in my mind would be the ending of sorrow, finally coming to the realization of what you truly are and bequeathing and ridding yourself of the ignorance of what you thought you were. Thus that you realize that you are both a subject in the world and sometimes, and no longer an object. So you have the ability to create as well as dominate, but you can have a choice in that matter.
Okay.
Not in masses, but in the school of critical literacy, I believe that we're not even fighting, we're coming to a consciousness. It's no longer, it's not a battle in that I'm not advocating or forcefully advocating liberation. Sedition, I think, is forceful. Liberation is collective. Liberation, people take a stance in because their lives depend on it. Sedition, someone can be forcibly led to sedition. I believe no one can be forcibly led to liberation.
How does the tradition of African American education, as described in your research, relate to the concept of critical literacy?
African Americans have had a history of a literacy of freedom, a literacy for freedom, and freedom for literacy. Throughout history, slaves have fought for and died for literacy. In Sunday schools, in case in point, the stories of Frederick Douglass, Harry Jacobs, illustrate the fight for literacy priorities.
Do you use the segregated schools as a model in your program at Simmons College?
As a model, no, but as a historical anchor, yes.
Okay.
For the record, I'm just acting. And today, my fellow Americans, the school of literacy has threatened, stained, and outright promoted the shameful overthrow of our American democracy and government by indoctrinating our students in our own education system with vehement sectarian political ideologies that promote hateful sedition and insurrection against the state.
Cornel West once stated that there is no affirmation through negation. The defense does not argue this statement. The School of Critical Literacy, in fact, believes and supports this statement. That is why critical literacy programs affirm people's humanity without negating the humanity of anybody. The absence of critical literacy programs negate the humanity of large populations of poor folk, people of color, women, gay peoples, and anyone who does not fit the conflated European history that dominates schools in the United States, which have actually portrayed white people as only villains and conquerors. The School of Critical Literacy aims to humanize all of those who have been illegally indoctrinated. The prosecution's attempt to indict critical literacy programs violates the democratic proclamations of the Constitution and is in fact themselves engaging in an act of sedition and indoctrination. In simple terms, the prosecution is engaging in the very criminal act that they are falsely and illegally accusing the defense of. Thank you, Your Honor. The defense.
Yeah, thank you. You may proceed. And in terms of the defense's case, they never defined what oppression was. What ways are they being oppressed? Is it their death rates? Is it high school dropout rates? Are they college dropout rates? Are they imprisonment rates? What is the status quo? What is that? How do corporations, churches, schools, the media, military, our families, government line, even this court, how do they act or how do they take part in this idea of oppression, which was never defined and no statistics were ever given?
I don't know how you could tie liberation, or the ending of sorrow, as he called it, to sedition or indoctrination. I think that he made a very good point in saying that this is ridding oneself of indoctrination and coming to the realization of an individual, and that therein lies the foundation for democracy.
I don't agree. Like, close your eyes or just imagine what our society in the United States would look like 30 years down the road if critical literacy was implanted all over as opposed to what we have now. In 30 years, what they're doing, they're sowing the seeds of sedition. We would have a profoundly different society. A profoundly different society. And when we do not have the same constitution, we have the longest written constitution in the Western world. Are we ready to sacrifice that by letting people be hypercritical of everything? And I'm just telling you, it's not going to be the same society.
We, the jury, find the defendants not guilty.
Let's take it. Hell
yeah.
After observing this trial, it is clear that the goals of big labor, the teachers' unions, and teachers themselves are not academic excellence. Rather, ideological brainwashing is at the forefront of their agenda. The School of Critical Literacy's goals are student indoctrination, social upheaval, and perpetual agitation, ultimately in pursuit of bigger government and spending without restraint, perhaps even the overthrow of our government. This school of thought is teaching students to protest and march. Their philosophical leader, Paulo Freire, is a communist. This left-wing philosophy promotes a radical, liberal version of America that majority of Americans would not support. Our students are being taught to fight back against the state, to oppose our government. Let's be clear, this is not about the process of education. These are the perspectives that promote ethnic solidarity, code for segregation amongst races. These are the kind of perspectives that support the DREAM Act, affirmative action. If you are truly American, you value equality and truth in the American dream and the ability to work hard to achieve your dreams and goals. To fill our students' heads with lies that they are oppressed and are not agents of their own future is a dereliction of duty of teachers. I am outraged that the defendants were found innocent. Concerned parents may want to consider the option of private or homeschooling.
I'm Amy Goodman. The ironically named League to Preserve American Democracy is charging the school with treason and accuses it of indoctrinating its students into sedition and overthrowing the government. This is another example of the ignorant xenophobic attitudes of the lawmakers in Arizona that seek to strike down any attempt by people of color to empower themselves. It is based solely on a narcissistic fear that empowered people of color have nothing better to do than to burn down white people's housing. We urge our viewers to call Tom Horton's office regardless of the verdict and voice their opinion on the matter. We would also encourage you to write letters to your own local congressman and tell them what's happening in your state. We want to let the lawmakers of Arizona and the League to Preserve American Democracy know that there is nothing more democratic than a well-informed, mentally liberated, participatory population. I'm Amy Goodman. This is Democracy.